differentiable equation. And we're also going to do separation of variables. You want like a subtitle, I suppose. And we're going to start off with one variable, which is really easy. Then with two variables, which is definitely a lot. So let's say I gave you dy over dx equals 2x. And f of 3 equals 8. And I asked you to find f of 5. I could probably give you a couple minutes and make this, but I'm not really that worried about it. So I'm just going to do it. So it's basically just finding c at this point. So if I integrate both sides of this, what's the integral of dy dx?
The original function.
It'd be the original function, so I can call that y, right? Then what's the integral of 2x? X squared plus c, right? There's no, like, boundaries, there's no limits, so that's a plus c. That could be any. X squared plus 10, x squared minus 30, x squared plus 5, could just be x squared. Well, so what our job is now is to use this information to find out what c is. So 8 equals 3 squared plus c. So what's c?
2. Oh, I totally.
3 squared is not 6. 3 squared is 9. So c is going to be -1, right? Which makes my equation, like I can write my equation again, but I have a better version of it now. So it's not x squared plus c anymore, now it's x squared minus 1, because I know c is -1. And at that point, I can plug in anything I want it to. Like what's f of 5, what's f of 100, whatever. So if I want f of 5, now it's going to be 5 squared minus 1. So 24. How's that? Seem reasonable? So let's say dy over dx equals cosine of x. And f of pi equals 2. Find f of pi over 2. Me or you?
Me.
You do it? Like, do you want me to go through it or do you want to go through it? Alright, I'll let you try. Yeah. Apple's going down right now. Hello? Let me double check them again, but I'm pretty sure. Has everybody bubbled? Everybody that's taken the AP test has bubbled, right? Walmart, have you bubbled? Why do I not believe her? Alright, I think we're good. Alright, thanks. Try that.
I never know.
It was in that room where you bubbled.
Yeah, so something happened between third and fourth hour that made it smell like fish, because it didn't smell like fish when we were in there.
Maybe Miss Kaiser ate lunch. Fish.
It smelled like old fish.
We were fishing during third hour.
Maybe she opened up a drawer that had dead fish in it.
Before lunch, so that's not
Maybe
it.
these.
Thank you.
So that's maybe a possible explanation.
Maybe she ate lunch early. Maybe she ate breakfast.
For breakfast.
Her breakfast was old salmon. I don't know.
That sounds like no one sees it
Everyone fish just work.
No.
I don't think that's just
I don't think
what
that's
I
right.
was.
That's just
I run a fish store.
Oh, did you? Oh. Okay. What? I have no idea. We'll find out in a second.
Oh, yeah.
I just made it up.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like these are kind of super early.
Okay. So, Integrate both sides. What's the integral of cos? Sine of x and then plus c, right? And then 2 is your y value. Pi is your x value. So what's sine of pi with the y value at 180 degrees? 0. So that just says 2 equals c, right? So then I write like the better version. So now it's sine of x plus 2. And very often they'll just ask you to stop there. They'll just say like find the equation. But you can just stop and you'll be done and that'll be your answer. I'm asking you to go in separate steps to show how to do the step. So I'm like, okay, what's sine of pi over 2 plus 2? So that's the y value at plus 2. That's the y value at 90, which is 1. That's what I was thinking of. And then 1 plus 2 gives you 3. What? Don't do that. I thought I believed you. How many had 3? Questions? All right. Physics.
I love physics.
Wow.
Bro, I just listened to the recording.
What's what is acceleration in? Do you guys use feet per second or meters per second?
Meters per
Meters.
second.
So what's acceleration?
Meters per
Meters per
second.
second squared.
What's the acceleration of gravity? Sorry.
Negative 9.81.
Okay. Let's say the initial velocity. All right. So I'm going to drop David
Yep.
from a 100-foot building.
Oh my god.
No, sorry, 100-meter building.
There you go.
That's much
If I'm dropping it, what's the initial velocity?
0.
What's the initial height?
100.
Find the equation. Find the equation that describes his place in the air at any given point. Should I probably do this?
Yes.
Got it. How do I go from acceleration to velocity?
Integral.
So I'm going to integrate acceleration. That'll give me velocity plus c. So like y equals the initial velocity plus c. We're trying to find the original equation, so we have 2 levels to go up. We gotta go from acceleration to velocity, find that c, and then go from velocity to position and find that c. So this is 0 and this is 0. So the y value of the velocity is 0. The x value of the velocity is 0. So what's c? 0. So that means my velocity function is. I'm not doing this right. I'm trying to mix up 2 different ways to explain it. Let me start over.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's fine.
Are we?
How?
It wasn't going well. Let's be honest.
Still David?
I mean, it's this.
Yes, it's still. I'm sure.
Throw
We
me
want
off
to change the
the
Caleb,
this
which
time.
is fine.
That's how I feel right
It
now.
didn't work when I threw David off, so let's try someone else. Alright, I'm throwing Maddie off.
Whoa! My tooth is already broken enough, so.
So I'm going to integrate. Let's do it this way. I'm going to integrate 9.8. That's the acceleration function, right? Negative 9.8. So if I integrate that, what should I end up? Not what's the integral, but if I integrate acceleration, what do I end up with? Velocity. So negative 9.8 t would be the integral, right? Plus c. So now we have velocity equals negative 9.8 t plus c. This is going back. Good job, Eddie. Do we see what I'm doing there?
Yes.
So people are looking strangely. We're okay? Now I'm going to plug in, so the x value is 0 and the y value is 0. So 0 equals negative 9.8 times 0 plus c. And the point of this is to find out what c is. And what is c? So that means my actual true velocity function is just negative 9.8 t plus 0 if I want, but there's no reason to write the plus 0. Well, I want a position though, so we just got to do that process again, because I have to go another level up. Are we good on this level?
Yes.
So if I go up a level, I'm going to integrate those. So what's the integral of velocity? 0.8t. Add 1 to the power. Multiply by the reciprocal of the new power, so what do you get? So negative 4.9. If you guys are in, I don't know which physics you use it, but do you have a formula that's like position? It's probably height equals negative 1/2 gt squared. Is that one of your?
Yeah.
So that's exactly what we just did, right? Isn't that number 1/2 times gravity?
Yeah.
Then there's your t squared. So like, that's where it comes from. Is you're integrating acceleration twice, and the second time you integrate it, you have to multiply by 1/2. So that's where that comes from. And then this is plus c. And in this problem, I apparently dropped Maddie from a 0-foot building. Let's change this. Let's change that to 100.
Oh, I was just admiring how your T's went from like a normal T to like the last one that's like a cursive T.
This is what
That's
slash
like she's
zero
already
is.
on the
They're all
ground.
cursive T's.
No, like go to the bottom because the last, yeah, it's like a. There's an it's the line. Oh, the parenthesis makes it look like.
Oh, like it's a fancy T.
Yeah.
All right. So what's S of t? 100. What's t? 0. That, I'm getting that from the fact that I told you, like, the initial height was 100. Because at times 0, the height is 100.
I don't see a T in there.
The t is hiding behind the 0, but the 0 is in place of the t.
Oh,
so
got
we know it's.
It's like after that.
I see it.
Yeah, it's like a fact, yeah.
I see it.
So then what's c? So my actual original equation would be negative 4.9 t squared plus 100. Of c for velocity was 0. And then that's why there's nothing to do with the velocity term here. We're going to do another one, for sure. But what else can I answer about this one?
C's just like
There's 2 c's. So when I go for acceleration to velocity, there's going to be a c. I have to find it. And then when I find that one, I'm going to have to integrate again. So there's going to be a new c. I have to find them both. You're just doing it twice. Yeah.
Well, we have to do this when they do this, like this type of.
I'm not in the habit of showing you guys things that are not on the AP topics. I don't know if you realized that by April,
Yeah, where's my seat?
but
This is taking all the time to do it anyway.
yeah, that's what
I mean, I am enjoying it, but
I mean. That's good, but that's not the reason I gave it to you.
Is the question
This is feet per second. Negative 32 feet per second. Do you guys work with feet at all in
No.
physics or
No.
not? Feet are just like people.
They
Yes.
take you feet, but you gotta put it.
You gotta put it in meters. All right. Well, this is being feet per second, so we're just gonna do a problem that way, just so it's a little different. The initial velocity. So I'm going to throw someone this time instead of dropping them. I'm gonna throw Diaz
Why do you keep trying?
upwards. I'm gonna throw him upwards so that he has to. So
That's
it's,
like an
it's
angel.
got, yeah, it's gonna.
I never
that's gonna
got
be-
dropped because I didn't work.
No
I
angles.
just happened to that,
Please
you know.
tell me we're not doing
No angles. In this world, I'm on the top of a building. I throw him straight up, and before he comes down, the building vanishes, so he can go all the way down. Because there's no horizontal component; it's just straight up and straight
No,
down.
you hold them open to get to the building.
Yeah.
I'll hold him out and then throw him up straight up. And
Yeah.
Send them all on the higher baby.
And his head smacks the top of the building as it's coming down.
No, because he goes straight up and straight down. I'm reaching over the edge.
Yeah.
Find the initial equation here. Find S of t. So that's a 128-foot building. I'm throwing Diaz upwards at 64 feet per second. I don't know how I'm doing that. Some sort of cannon or something. And then the acceleration is just good gravity. This isn't the hard stuff either.
So when you first integrated, you say
I hope it's not hard. We'll see.
when you first integrated, you say v of t equals negative 32t plus plus C.
Hmm.
V of 0.
V of t, and then you plug the 0 in and the 64 in. So, I mean, not always, but I'm giving you a point. In this situation with that, at that specific time, you know 0 and 64 go together, so you use those to find C. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, I just need to know that this equation.
Not in this equation,
Oh, not
just in this
equation, in this
problem. Yeah, okay,
problem,
alright,
okay.
alright. I was being picky about the wording. Yes, do you find the problem more interesting because you're the one getting wrong?
It's nice to know how long I'm in here.
Did you figure that out?
Okay.
No,
If you set it equal to 0, you could solve it.
yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Or we could find out like what's the peak height that Diaz reaches before he starts crashing back down.
You have to find the peak height before you find how long it takes for the
It's a
music to
good
air.
idea.
Not in calculus.
Physics.
Physics, you might have to. I would just find the height equation set equal to 0. That would tell me when it's on the ground. But you probably have to plug into this, then grab that, plug into this, grab that. Plug.
If you're just dropping them, it's time to height 0. But if you're throwing him up first, you have to count from when he's up in the air to how high he gets,
Right.
and that's from there to the bottom.
So you have to do like 2 separate equations that add
Yeah,
up.
and then add them.
Yeah, we like that. Okay. Are we good to go or not yet?
Not yet.
Okay. Yeah, physics actually gets a lot easier, I think, with calculus.
100%.
Do you agree? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. If I did it right, he reaches the ground after about 5.5 seconds.
5.5 seconds, Diaz.
If I did it right,
If they get it right.
Which you probably did.
which is big, very large.
We just put solve.
So C is
Type in that equation equals 0.
Wait, have pound.
I
Alright,
just
I'm done.
grabbed it,
Oh,
and
yeah.
it's between 5 and 6. It's about halfway.
Okay. Quiet, please. So I'm going to integrate A of t, which is the integral of negative 32 times dt. That is going to give me negative 32t plus c. What did I do? What? God. But what was the real distraction here? David cracking his knuckles, or you blurting out about it? Okay. So what is the integral of acceleration? Velocity, and we know that equals negative 32t plus c. And then I'm giving you, okay, when time was 0, the velocity was 64. So c is 64, which means velocity is negative 32t plus 64. Then I just do it again. How many had that velocity equation? Okay. Questions on getting to there? You okay?
Yeah, I just switched my 0 and my 64.
Okay.
Yeah, I did that also.
So that's like the 0 is in place of the t up here, right? So you put the 0 in place of the t in the problem. So integrate both those. The integral of velocity is position. This will be negative 1 or negative 16t squared plus 64t plus c. And then I give you an initial height. So you end up with c equals 128. And so your initial position, your main function, negative 16t squared plus 64t plus 128. So I don't know if you guys use this in physics, but when I taught this stuff in advanced algebra, we used this equation. Is that familiar to you guys?
Yeah.
So 16 is half of gravity, right? Initial velocity, the v sub 0 ends up there. And the initial height was 128, and that ends up there. And this integration process is exactly why that works. Like we basically just derived that equation. Where does the 64 come from? So that's back up when I integrated acceleration, I got to velocity right here. And I know that when time equals 0, the velocity is 64. So I plug those in. And then that just tells me c equals 64.
Oh, is it because C was 0 in the first one? That's why you didn't write it on the next one?
Yes. Yes. So this one had a number, so I got to write it.
Let's screw up my number, I think. Yes.
Sorry for that. Does that make sense though?
Yeah,
What
you
you should
just
have done?
need to take a second.
Like we do it.
Yeah.
Any other questions on this process?
Why are you throwing GSM?
Sound fun. Is it okay, Diaz?
Can I have that paper?
Yeah.
I'm the only one.
Jesus.
You gotta sign it.
You threw it and it went in an inch.
I doubt that.
Maddie, you're gonna get on it.
That's
Yeah,
like,
so it's
whatever
other
you want.
schools.
You just want it.
I gotta rewrite this whole thing now.
What are you in?
Don't draw that podium again. That was a one-time thing.
Wow. It's great.
It's not great.
See, you tried your best.
Okay, now we're gonna do. We're still doing. So this is like a subtitle. We're still, if you're into subtitles.
Yes.
It can't be quite the half.
I will fight you on that, but I don't watch a lot of it.
Separation.
Nope. 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 It's not if you go.
Separation.
This will separate you from this classroom in a second.
Ah, dude, what's separating powers?
So these are kind of annoying to make up. So I made them up earlier and wrote them down. So we're gonna do those. So dy over dx equals x over y. And then f of 2 equals 4. And I'm going to say find f of 3. So this is the first time we've had, so we got to integrate this, but we got two variables, right? So separation of variables is exactly what we're going to do. We're going to put all the y's on one side, all the x's on the other side. And then we're allowed to do whatever we want to both sides of the equation as long as we do it to both sides. So once I get them separated, I'm going to integrate them separate. I'm going to integrate the y's over here and the x's over here, and then kind of put everything back together. So the first job in all of these is to figure out how would I get all the y's on one side and all the x's on the other side. So looking at this one, I think the easiest thing to do would be cross multiply, right? If you cross multiply, I'm going to get y times dy equals x times dx. And sometimes that's different. Sometimes you got to divide or square root, or that's just like, can you take an equation and put all the y's on one side and all the x on the other side. So I can't go through all the different ways that can happen, but I think you guys will be fine with that. And then I can integrate. So once I have them both separated, it feels weird to integrate both sides, but you're allowed to add 2 to both sides, you're allowed to divide both sides by 7, you're allowed to square both sides, you're allowed to cosine both sides, you can integrate both sides. As long as you're fair, you can do whatever you want. So I'm going to integrate both sides. Don't write this next step, just watch. So over here, I'd have 1/2 y squared plus c. Over here, I'd have 1/2 x squared plus c. But think about those constants. I don't want 2 of them. So what I'm going to do is move this constant over. So it's technically like constant minus constant. But we don't know what the constants are. We don't know that they're the same, so it's not like they cancel. But I'm just going to take those 2 constants that are being subtracted and call that a new constant. Does that make any sense?
Yes.
So I'm just going to do that.
It makes sense. Can you put
What?
Why was that funny? I didn't think that was at all
How do
funny.
you do that?
You said you're gonna make a new constant.
I did.
That's
Yeah.
3 different variables. C's.
Oh, I got you. So you want to put like K or something. Okay.
Yeah.
All I'm saying is if I take a constant and subtract another constant, don't I just get a constant? I can call them whatever I want. Label them different things if you want to, but The idea is just a number minus a number is just another number. So I'm just going to represent it with a C.
So do you want us to just write the half?
So this step is not necessary. That's why I said don't write it. You're just going to jump from there to there. So now you can. I was just showing you like why it worked that.
That was just not big.
What?
I was expecting some variable, no plus E.
That's why you laughed. You thought it'd be different. I didn't understand what it was. David,
What happens with the dy and dx?
I integrated it.
They go away.
They go away.
Who can do it?
They go away normally. They go away.
Oh, because yeah. Gotcha. It just confused me because we were using those variables.
I got you. Okay. Now, we're going to plug in. We're going to find our C with where we are right now. So I'm going to plug in X, I'm going to plug in Y. So what's Y?
4.
Y is 4, what's X?
2.
Good job, David. Solve that. Figure out what C is. It's like 8 equals 2 plus C. So C equals 6. Agree?
Whoops.
Are we good with that? C equals 6? Okay, now I go rewrite I'm rewriting this equation that I had before, but I have more information now, so I include that information, so I'm putting a 6 there. For C. And then, if the problem just asked you to find f of 3, you could plug in right now and kind of work through it that way. That's not actually typical, though. I'm giving you more steps than they usually ask. Usually what they'll ask is, okay, now solve this for y. Find the particular solution is how they'll phrase it. So solve this for y. Then we're going to plug in. So if I wanted y by itself here, what's the first thing you would do?
Get rid of the halves.
I would double everything, I think. Right? So y squared equals x squared plus 12. And now this, I regret the numbers I chose, but we're going to work with those. I'm going to square root it. When I square root both sides, there's technically the plus or the minus square root of x squared plus 12. You don't have to call me God, I just took a square root. It's not that big.
I was calling on it to say like that kind of stuff.
So, how do I know which one to choose?
Area is positive.
How do you know the area is positive?
Because area exists.
Because
How do you know this is area?
wait,
Because it's an integral. Because we're taking an integral of a thing, an integral's involve area.
Okay, but if it's below the axis, it'd be there.
yeah,
Ooh, gotcha. Alright, how do I know which one to use?
you don't just do both.
Nope, that's a lie. Stop lying.
Well, the first one's positive, so the second one's probably positive. It's right next to it, so like, you know, it's probably.
Not a horrible answer, it's close.
No,
No, you can't leave it there. When I plugged in 2, did I get out of that a positive or a negative number? Positive, so which one do I have to choose?
But what if 3 was negative, though?
It can't be. Because if there was a negative there, like if I put a negative there, there's no possible way that when I plugged in 2, I would get 4. I would have gotten negative. So I'm using this y value to determine whether the square root should be positive or negative. And so since this is a positive number, everything else has to be a positive number too. So it's going to be y equals the square root of x squared plus 12. And I'd say probably 2/3 of you would have jumped from there to there, never even thought about it, just made it positive and gotten lucky.
Yep.
But, and that's fine, unless it's negative. You know, so you got to be aware of it. And I'm still not done.
Oh my god.
Again, I'm not a gosh. Just do this.
It's a gosh.
Now we gotta plug in 3.
I'm not a gosh either.
Well,
What do I do now?
I wasn't
Look
looking
at
at
your mom.
Plug in 3, so that's the square root of 21. Anything in there I can go through again? discuss again, clarify. Seem okay?
That is surprising.
Do you want to try one similar to that first, or go to the next one?
Try one similar.
Try one similar? Yeah.
So in the beginning it's like x squared.
Yeah.
Would you like
Well, let's find out. Do that. So I'm not really answering your question. I'm trying to make you answer. How's that? Okay.
could have just done number 2 if you wanted to.
That's a little different scenario.
Okay.
Because the Y's on top, and that changes like the whole volume. So we'll get that next. Try that Y up there next. Like the original equation.
So, does the x have to be with v of x, the y have to be with v of y?
Yes.
Like what?
Yeah, I want your answer to be like Y equals 1/3 x 1/3 plus 7x plus 12 or something like that. That'd be crazy if that was actually. Then you could. Yeah. I would encourage it.
Do you group these then?
Mr. David, do you need God? Rubbish. That's how it starts. Cross multiply. Integrate both sides.
Is it okay if mine are on opposite sides?
Like your X's and Y's, you mean? Yeah. Might make your life hard. I don't know. I'm like
You always
way more comfortable with the Y than the left. That's me. You can do whatever you. It doesn't matter. This is like an entire class in college, so if you're gonna go on in math, you'll take Calc 1, Calc 2, Calc 3, and then Calc 4 is differential equations. DiffQ, differential equations. Yeah.
Ah, great.
It was
This one will be positive.
this was the worst grade I got in the class in college. Yeah.
Really is right.
Well,
At the Calc 4 level.
I mean, it's like a mountain of knowledge. I'm teaching you like the that much. I could do this stuff. If that's what you're trying to say.
Teach this stuff. No.
I'm pretty sure.
But it gets crazy intense.
Yes, how crazy.
I can't even remember. But I remember sitting, like, if you guys are in, say, integrated math, I think most of you probably can look around the room and be like, I feel like I'm one of the smarter people in this room. Is that a fair statement? Don't try to tell me you don't judge people, because you all do. And I know there's people in integrated math looking around the room going, oh my god, everyone else here is smarter than me. In this class, that was me. I mean, people were sitting there, like, it's just crazy how smart people get. Like, I thought I was smart. I was pretty smart in high school. When I got to college, it was just like,
Wow.
That I've had those feelings in elementary school before.
You what?
I think the person was like, I felt like I was pretty smart, and then I look at my friend and I'm like, oh, now I feel stupid because they're all 10 times smarter than me. And it made me feel really kind of sad.
I mean, everyone's gonna get to that at some. Not everyone, but
I've always known that stupid, so
so we're good.
I
Okay.
just accept it.
So plug in 1 for y, 0 for x. So c is going to equal a half. So if I rewrite this, now I can put the half in there because I know what it is. And I'm going to solve. All I'm doing now is get y by itself. So it's like an algebra problem now. So I'm going to double everything. So 2/3 x to the third plus 1. I'm going to square root everything, and do I want the positive or the negative of the square root?
Positive.
I want the positive. How come? How do I know that?
Because f of 0 is a positive 1.
So I got a positive y value up there. Okay. How many had that?
I'm not done yet.
Are you on the way? Were you like on the right track? Okay.
She's mad at you.
Are you mad at me, man? Do you need more time? Dave?
Yeah.
I was probably doing
So you multiply everything by 2, right?
I did.
So you get y squared.
If you want, I mean, if you're like, instead of waiting, if you want to go on, this is the next one we're doing. So if you want to try number 2,
Will it be written as points like that, or?
you don't have to try number 2. It's probably best if you wait for me, actually.
I'm good now. I'm good now.
Now you want to try it?
Yeah.
What will you give us if we get it right?
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
A thumbs up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe a thumbs up, but I'm pretty lazy, so I might not even want to do that.
So you should assume whenever those fractions.
Pretty much whenever I give you a thumbs up in the class, this class is often you walk me back. So, you know.
I don't want to say all the way. I don't know. I think usually I hate saying always. So you're like, well, you said all the way.
Well, like,
If it's a fraction in front of the y, you got to get rid of the fraction. Yeah. So you like multiply everything by the reciprocal. Thought you guys.
x above y.
Oh, the original question.
Yeah.
Then okay, if you have x above y, then what?
Like, you should cross multiply just off the top.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. I agree.
Yeah.
Okay. This one's tougher. I'm not going to wait for you to finish. I actually wouldn't mind when we don't have enough time. Okay, so I need to get the x and y's by themselves. So I'm going to do two things at the same time. I'm going to take this dx and move it up to the top over here. I'm going to take that y. So essentially I'm multiplying both sides by dx. I'm also going to divide both sides by y, which will cancel this one and make it down there. So I guess let me know if that makes sense or not. But I'm saying I have dy over y equals 3x squared times dx. You see how I got to that?
Yeah.
So if you multiply both sides by dx, then cancel there, and show up over here. Then if you divide both sides by y, it cancel here, and it'll show up over there. Alright? So I don't integrate with variables on the bottom, right? But we've always moved up to the top. So that's going to be y to the negative first times dy equals 3x squared times dx. Plus, now it's in a form I can integrate, so I'm going to integrate both sides. What is the integral of y to the negative first? Natural log of y.
Oh, yeah.
So that's not like I'm going to add 1 to the power is normally what you do. But then when you go to multiply by the reciprocal, what's the reciprocal of 0? That's undefined, so wait, that's not going to work. Oh, right, that's natural log. Like, that's kind of my thought process. Integral of 3x squared would be x to the third, and then you put your plus c on the right-hand side. Then we're going to plug in. So this is ln of 6 or 0?
0. Sorry, 6.
6. I don't need the absolute values there anymore. Why not?
Because it's already positive.
6 is already positive, so I don't need to like reinforce that. And then this would be 0 to the third plus c. questions up to here? You guys with me? We good? So what's C? Ln of 6. So I go rewrite this, but I can write it better now. Now I need to get y by itself. So you want to undo whatever is currently being done to the y. So if it's being multiplied by 4, you divide by 4. If it's being squared, you square root. What's the opposite of ln? So you're going to actually go e to the power of both sides. Like you're putting e kind of below, saying, all right, this ln of y is going to become a power of e, and then the stuff over here is going to become a power of e. On the left-hand side, what happens to e's and ln's? Cancel. But over here, I get this, which is an acceptable answer. So on a free response, you can stop there. But on a multiple choice, they would typically keep going, and I want to show you how. So if you have x to the 5th times x to the 4th, what is that? X to the 9th, right? So if you're multiplying the bases together, you add the powers. Well, I can unpack it that way also. So like do that process in reverse. So couldn't I start with x to the 9th and be like, oh, that's x to the 4th times x to the 5th. So I'm going to say this is e to the x to the 3rd times e to the ln of 6. Which I know is 6, but that's not the stuff I'm worried about. Do you see how that is okay?
Yeah.
Typically we do it this way, right? Like I have the same base, I'm going to add the powers. I'm just unpacking it because, like you guys just said, what's e to the ln of 6? It's just 6. And then I can make my answer a lot simpler. So, again, free response, stop here. You are welcome to stop there. You should stop there because it takes time to keep going and you might screw up. Multiple choice, you got to be able to recognize, okay, that's what they did and kind of work through to get to their answer. Question on that? Oh, I didn't even finish today. Yeah, so I'm supposed to plug in 1, right? So e6 times e to the 1 to the 3rd. So that'd be 6e. That's not the part I'm like worried about. I'm just gonna forget.
So on a multiple choice, you actually kind of would have to.
On that one, you would have to, yeah. Well,
you wouldn't really be able to. Well, I guess it'd just be hard.
Well, then you plug
No,
in
you
1
can
and
plug
then
in.
it would be e to the ln 6, and then you're just.
yeah, if you plugged in here, you'd get like e to the 1 plus ln of 6, which is e to the 1 times. You still like have to go through the process, though, I guess. Yeah. Okay, so I wish we had time to do a couple more, to be honest, but we don't. So, do you kind of this? There's a couple that are a little tougher, a couple that are a little easier. Let's see where we are tomorrow and keep going. I will make sure to put whatever we're doing on Schoology also, like paper too, for the next like rest of my life, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll try to remember.
This reminds me of what Colin said about how classes should be shorter. Remember that stats? I was like, nah, because we're always low on time. We always end up looking at the clock. We're like, oh, well,
Yeah.
we should do more.
We used to have block scheduling, which for Calc I loved it. We had time to really get into stuff, but for every other class it was too long.
That's why.
Block scheduling, so you only have 4 classes every day.
Well, my old single day.
It's like an hour and a half.
Pain in the butt.
You'd have calculus for an hour and a half on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Tuesday, every other day.
They got rid of that the year we went to 6th grade. Because the middle school.
And then that also meant that
They got rid of everything.
But block scheduling was a pain in the butt. Nobody could keep.
Did you get like an SRT with it, like study hall?
Yeah, we also
No.
had
So we had 7 classes
Yeah,
and a
so
study hall.
we had 6 classes,